Betsy Faria was fighting for her life. Deep into chemo treatments for a second cancer diagnosis, she knew her time with her husband and daughters was dwindling. Betsy had a family who adored her and cared for her, and she wanted to provide for them when she was gone. She also had plenty of friends who only wanted the best for her, and one who wanted her dead. This is a story filled with lies, a man wrongly convicted, a woman who today would be a serial killer on the loose, an inept small-town police force, and a DA who's looking for some limelight. This is the incredibly true story of the murder of Betsy Faria, her husband Russ, and her killer who will kill again, Pam Hupp. Hey y'all, I'm Chris Calvert.
And I'm her husband, Rob Podorf. And welcome to Hitched to Homicide.
For better or worse.
Till death do us part.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yes, welcome.
We're so glad that you're joining us again this week.
Yep.
I have to say, the first episode of Hitched to Homicide was an amazing thing. We had so many downloads.
An amazing success.
It was an amazing success. Thank you to everybody who went out there and listened.
Yep.
And we're glad if you're back again this week. Wherever you're listening, like, rate, review. That helps other people to find us. The more, the merrier.
It does.
We like a big family. And if you want to be part of the family, you can join the In-Laws and Outlaws on Facebook. Just go in there. There's just a couple questions to answer and quite a party in there already.
Yep. And Scotty, the rescue dog, is also a part of that now.
Yeah. Oh, is he?
Yes, he is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I've included him.
So if you hear him during the podcast, he is here in the studio right now.
He's roaming around.
He is roaming around
feet right now, and every once in a while he may bark for attention. So.
He might. He just might.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump into this right now. Pam Hupp, it's a huge subject. There is a show on NBC right now. Dateline has done podcasts about the thing about Pam.
And Chris hasn't let me watch the NBC.
I have not. He does not know this case.
Yep. I didn't want to know anything about it because I didn't want to have preconceived notions.
Yeah, well, I'm going to fill your ears with all kinds of stuff. I want to say right from the get-go, this is going to be a two-part podcast because you can't fit what this woman did into one podcast. And this is also an ongoing investigation, which means even after part 2 comes out, we will have to do a part 3 because there's more to come in this story. But I really want to focus, especially in part 1, on Betsy Faria.
Yeah. Pam was a busy person.
She was very busy, but Betsy kind of gets lost in the whole thing, and I want to make sure that I talk about her because, we're big on it's important for victims. We want to talk about how they lived and not just how they died.
Yep.
Before we get started, I want to give you some sources. KSDK, Channel 5 in St. Louis Magazine, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Wikipedia, the New York Post, Crime Reads, and the book Bone Deep, Untangling the Betsy Faria Murder Case by Charles Bosworth Jr. and Joel Schwartz. I did read it. I will post a link to it and all the sources in the show notes. By the way, the book is amazing. It is an amazing, well put together piece of literature. It's really good. So I highly recommend anybody who's interested in this case to get this book.
And Scotty's ears perked up when you said bone deep. Sorry.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Elizabeth K. Meyer, Betsy, was born on March 24th, 1968 in Richmond Heights, Missouri, which is a suburb of St. Louis. Her parents are Kenneth and Janet. She also had 3 sisters, Mary, Julie, and Pamela. She's the third of 4 girls. She's known as a very sweet girl. She had a huge heart, people loved Betsy. They loved her. She had big blue eyes, a big smile. She was the girl who was a friend to everybody.
The All-American girl.
She was the All-American girl, and she was an outstanding softball player.
Oh, wow.
And she was a member of 2 state championship teams in 1984 and 1985.
Nice.
She was a really good student. She was not a mean girl. She was like a really sweet, good kid, friends to everybody. She was just a really sweet young woman growing up, and that extended into her adult years as well. All of her friends only have wonderful things to say about Betsy. And Betsy had this little side hustle. She was DJing for friends and families for their parties, for their weddings, and her little business was called Party Starters.
Nice.
And apparently she could actually get the party started. That was part of the name because she could get just about anybody out on the dance floor. And I know somebody who does this as well, Techno Joe. If you're listening, you just got to shout out Techno Joe.
There you go.
But when Russ first set eyes on Betsy, she was working the cash register at a service station in O'Fallon, Missouri. This is right outside of St. Louis. It was 1997, and at the time, she was Betsy Carter. She had 2 small children, 2 daughters, Leah and Mariah Day. Now, she loves these girls like crazy, and they're really close to their mom. The girls are from a previous long-term relationship. His name is Tremus Day.
Tremus?
Tremus.
Wow.
And when Betsy and Tremus broke up, she got married. It was a short-term marriage to a man named Ron Carter. So when Betsy and Russ meet, Betsy is actually going through a divorce. And even though she's in the throes of this divorce, she asks Russ out on a date. And I love that. I thought she's taking the bull by the horns.
Yeah.
And these two fall in love and end up moving in together for a couple of years. And then on January 21st, 2000, Betsy ties the knot with Russ Faria.
Okay.
Russ was a plain-spoken guy. He was born on February 12th, 1970. He liked to fish. He liked to ride his Harley. He had a hog.
Yeah, my man after my own heart.
Somebody else in this studio has a hog.
Yes, I do.
He was really close to his mom. He was very close to his mama. And Betsy will encourage Russ to go back to school, and he does. He goes and gets some student loans, goes back to school, gets a degree in IT, and then takes an IT job with a company called Enterprise Holdings Incorporated, which is based out of St. Louis, which is actually, can you guess, Enterprise Holdings Incorporated?
Absolutely no idea.
Enterprise Rental Cars.
Oh, see, I'm a musician. You have to speak slowly and use crayons.
Well, there are people. When I saw Enterprise Holdings, I was like, that's got to be the car company. And it was. It is.
And this is why you're the brains of the bunch.
So Betsy, along with her side gig of DJing, she also worked at a local State Farm insurance agency, and she liked to play tennis. And these two, Betsy and Russ, admittedly, they didn't have a perfect marriage. Nobody's marriage is perfect, right? This is Hitched to Homicide. I'm force you to listen to murder stuff. But they had arguments. They had loud arguments, but there was never any violence. And I want to repeat that. There was never any violence.
Right.
And over the course of their marriage, they will separate a couple times, one time even for almost a year. And during these times they're apart, they would in fact see or date other people.
Okay.
But they always came back to each other. And around 2009, Betsy and Russ moved to Troy, Missouri. And Betsy's youngest daughter, Mariah, decides to live with Betsy's mom so she can finish high school at the same place that she started. Around 2009, Betsy and Russ moved to Troy, Missouri, and Betsy's youngest daughter, Mariah, decides that she's going to live with Betsy's mom, and that way she can finish high school at the same place she started. And the older daughter, Leah, was living with Betsy's sister already. Leah didn't get along with Russ, or maybe Russ and her mom, but neither of these girls had a relationship with their biological father, who was now living in Florida, and he had a whole other life, a wife and kids, and so he's not really a part of their lives.
So he didn't even contact them, or?
No, he's just not a part. He's their biological dad. Parents were never married.
Right.
Yeah, right. And even though Russ and Betsy had their ups and downs, they were always working on their marriage, and they even attended Morning Star United Methodist Church in Wentzville, where the pastor there was helping them to improve upon their relationship.
Okay.
And since we're married, and this is Hitched to Homicide, I just wanted to take a sec and say I highly recommend therapy for anyone who's getting married. I just highly recommend therapy.
Yep.
It's always good to work on yourself. Life's hard.
Absolutely.
Adulting is hard. You know, adulting's like being in a Quentin Tarantino movie most of the time. Yeah. That's the way I feel anyway. I saw something that was like adulting's like eating soup with a fork.
There you go.
And there are days when we all feel that way.
Like trying to nail Jell-O to a wall.
Which is why therapy's always good. So, yes, but they were doing this. They were working with this pastor at the Morning Star United Methodist Church. In late 2009, Betsy is diagnosed with breast cancer. Now, I've had many friends who've battled this disease. They're all warriors, and Betsy is also a warrior.
Right.
And I want to stop there, and now I'm going to introduce you to probably what everybody thinks is the star of the show.
Drum roll.
Pam Hupp.
Bum, bum, bum. Sorry.
So you're not just doing the music for the podcast, you're also doing music with your voice for the podcast.
It's a curse.
I started to say with your mouth, but I'm not going to say that. Yeah.
All right.
Pamela Marie Newman is born on October 10th, 1958, to Shirley and Victor. Pam's mom is a grade school teacher, and her father worked for decades at Union Electric. And I always saw, when everyone talked about her parents, they were like, Mom was a school teacher, Dad was a union man. And it's like, okay, well, he was an electrician.
Okay.
But he worked at Union Electric. She does have siblings. All the Newman children were raised in a Catholic home. Pam's friends from school, Riverview Gardens High School, remember Pam as boy crazy, which apparently was the reason that she was just an average student.
Gotcha.
She had her eyes elsewhere, not on her own paper. Eyes on your own paper. But while she's in high school, she meets a boy. He was soft-spoken, well-liked. He was a member of the soccer team, the golf team, the National Honor Society.
So he was an underachiever.
He was a good kid. And he and Pam started dating when they were juniors in high school. They went to senior prom together, and as the story goes, she got pregnant.
Uh-oh.
And 3 months later, these two get married.
Wow.
Now, he had a soccer scholarship to play at Wash U in St. Louis.
Wow.
Really good school. But then he found out he couldn't travel with the team because he had a wife and a baby at home. That'll ruin some stuff for you.
That'll dampen the party.
He quits school and goes to work as a carpenter. Now, Pam is not happy. She's not happy. All of her friends are off to college. They're going to parties. They're doing beer bongs. And she's changing diapers for her little girl, Sarah.
Right.
And I'm not going to talk about Pam's kids very much because Lord knows they get it. They've got to be getting it from all sides while their mom's story is playing out while Renee Zellweger, is dressed in a fat suit being their mom. But I will say this. Pam will have a favorite kid, and it's not Sarah.
Okay.
Pam does enroll at the University of Missouri in St. Louis, but she has to drop out. This young couple is broke, they fight all the time, and their marriage falls apart. The marriage is only going to last 6 years, and it was a really ugly divorce that was final in 1983. But before the divorce is even final, Pam had already started dating Mark Allen Hupp.
Okay.
Now, Mark is an easygoing guy who had played minor league baseball for the Texas Rangers. When he didn't make it to the show, to the big league, he fell back on his trade, which was also carpentry, just like husband number one. And together, Pam and Mark get pregnant, and she gives birth to a boy, Travis, who I think is the favorite child. And they moved to Naples, Florida in 1989.
Okay.
Now, there are reports that Pam disliked her mother and her father, and I read when she was growing up that her parents were both high-functioning alcoholics, and that Pam was rebellious, like she was a risk taker, and whatever her parents wanted her to do, she did the exact opposite.
Just a rebellious young girl.
Just to be defiant, yeah. Now, she's going to have little to no contact with her mom, and when her dad dies in 2000... she still really didn't care to speak to her mom, but her mom is going to play a big role in this story.
Okay.
That's called foreshadowing.
There it is.
Now, while she's in Florida, Pam gets a degree in computer science from a college in Naples, and she starts working at a State Farm insurance agency while they live there in Florida. 12 years later, they're going to come back to Missouri and settle in O'Fallon, Missouri. Pam and Mark start flipping houses, and Pam takes a clerical job at the local State Farm office. And in 2001, when Pam walks into the State Farm office, the first person she meets is Betsy Faria.
And so it begins.
Now, Betsy is 11 years younger than Pam. And of the two of them, Pam was usually considered the more mature of the two, and not because of age. Because Betsy was bubbly and warm-hearted, but apparently she could sometimes be a scatterbrain. And Pam, on the other hand, well, she liked to party too, but she was more logical and steady. And according to their old boss at State Farm, his name is Mike, quote, she, meaning Pam, was the first employee in every morning, and we'd spend 10 to 15 minutes talking. She had very good insights and human nature. She was wise, a positive person. She was very level-headed. I never saw her mad. She saw a bigger picture, and she was very adept at office politics, end quote.
There you go.
Now, there are also some other stories about Pam. Like her married daughter tells her mother that she's going to put in a bid on a house that's in foreclosure because she's going to flip this house. And Pam tells her that the house is too expensive for her. You know, because Pam and Mark Hupp, they like to flip houses.
Okay.
But what Pam does next is, after she tells her daughter that the house is too expensive, don't bid on this house, you can't do this.
Let me guess.
What?
She bids on it.
She bids
There
on the
you go.
house herself. $1,000 more than she knew her daughter was able to offer for the house.
Oh, such a sweetheart.
That's a dick move.
Yeah, big time.
Such a dick move, right?
Oh,
Pam
man.
had the winning offer, and she flipped the house, and she sold it for a profit. She just pulled the rug out from underneath her own daughter.
Wow.
Now, I mean, most of us like to see our kids succeed.
Pam didn't.
Pam did not. That wasn't on Pam's agenda.
No.
But while Pam and Betsy are both working at this State Farm agency, they become friends. I would not say BFFs, but they are friends. And while they're both working there, Pam does some weird stuff, like some hinky goes down.
All right.
She'd drop hints and say things like, I'm involved in an FBI case. I have top security clearance. And when she's asked about it further, she'd say, I can't talk about it.
Yeah. Well, did the FBI know that she was?
Yeah, right. But
Yeah.
it made me think of the guy, Sean Eckhart, with the Jeff Gillooly and the
yeah,
Nancy
Nancy
Kerrigan
Kerrigan.
case. Yeah, where he ran the bodyguard
Right.
company out of his parents' basement. But then he was telling everybody that, like, he apparently had, like, James Bond fantasies going on in his head.
Yeah,
and-
it was all legit, though.
yeah, he's just a blowhard. Well, that's what Pam is, too. She's like, I think she just wanted to be somebody so badly.
Right.
But I think what she is a sociopath, and she's a pickle shy of a quart. Also, when Pam would get into situational conflicts with coworkers, these coworkers would find that their cars had been keyed outside in the parking lot at the insurance agency.
Which was, totally
That's
coincidental.
just a coinky-dink,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And some of these people started getting anonymous letters mailed to their house, like mean and threatening letters.
Wow.
So was it Pam? Maybe, maybe not. If I worked in that office, I wouldn't get in a confrontation with her because I wouldn't want to get my car keyed.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there are all these instances where Pam would get a little mouthy with the neighbors about things that didn't really involve her. Like, she was that person. She is what people would today call a Karen. But I don't want to do that because I have close friends who are named Karen, and none of them are like that. But she was definitely the I want to speak to a manager lady.
Right.
She was that person. She liked to insert herself into other people's business. She's nosy, but she didn't have a whole lot of close friends. And I'm not sure who left the insurance agency first or if they both did, but Betsy and Pam will lose touch for several years. And it's also important to note that even though Pam worked for insurance companies more than one in her insurance career, she was also fired from 2 insurance companies, both times for forging signatures.
Oops. So I'm guessing that's a no-no?
That's a no-no. That's a big no-no. Anybody who works in an insurance agency right now is like, what? Yeah, so she's forging signatures.
Employee of the year.
In November of 2009, Pam is working in a United Healthcare office, and she's carrying a stack of files when she stumbles over a box on the floor and goes headfirst into a filing cabinet.
Okay.
She suffered head and back injuries that would require surgery and substantial physical therapy.
Wow.
And Pam has relatives. All right, just hang on to your drawers right now. But Pam has relatives who have said that she suffered brain damage from this traumatic fall.
I think the brain damage preceded
Might have
the
been
fall.
done already, but while she's in the hospital, her personality changed, quote, drastically.
Okay.
She suffered from depression, anxiety, confusion, pain, fear, and significant memory deficit, to which I say, damn, that sounds like 50% of the world right now.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I guess Pam became a little delusional. She would tell these paranoid stories about a man who would sneak into her room at night and stare at her.
Wow.
And he planned to kill her, and she'd saved a drinking straw so she could jam it into his eye if he attacked her.
Wow.
And speaking of drinking straws, if you've watched the series on NBC, you know that Pam, or Renee Zellweger, always seems to have a big gulp in her hand.
Okay.
And I guess that was true. She even had a rewards card for her fountain drinks.
That's when you're hardcore. When you got a rewards card for a big gulp, yeah, that's pretty hardcore.
It is such a great little character detail for Renee Zellweger as she plays Pam, because she slurps out of this thing, and it's so annoying, and Pam is annoying.
I'm still stuck on the rewards card.
Yeah, exactly. But even though she has all these apparent physical problems and mental problems, she is on 10 different prescriptions.
Wow.
And they include Valium, Effexor, which is an antidepressant, which a lot of people call side Effexor. Sorry, Effexor, don't come for me. Ambien, which helps you sleep. People sleepwalk with that stuff. She's got a lot going on.
Wow.
Now, I'm going to be upfront with everybody. There are lots of people that think the head injury and paranoia is hooey. But I found it in my research, and if I find it, then I'm going to tell you about it. So there you go. That is part of what her family has said.
Okay.
Regardless of what she really had going on, she now collects disability checks because of her injuries, head, back, neck, and apparently a drop foot, for which she definitely does not have. If anybody knows, that's like nerve damage.
Drop foot is?
Yes, and you have balance and coordination issues, and she does Zumba classes.
Is that just a term, or is it something to do with her foot?
No, it's actually a term, but it's your foot. It's like nerve damage in your leg and your foot.
Okay.
Yeah. But she definitely does not have this. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Okay.
Also, in late 2009, Pam's friend Betsy Faria is diagnosed with breast cancer. Okay. And by January 2010, Pam was back in Betsy's life. Now, to be fair, lots of people were coming out of the woodwork to help Betsy because she was that kind of person. She was the kind of friend who would always be there for others. And in kind, her people were there to help her through her diagnosis too, including Pam. Pam's suddenly back in Betsy's life, and Pam is taking or offering to take Betsy to all her chemo treatments, even if Betsy doesn't want her to. And in fact, Betsy's dad, Ken Meyer, asked his daughter in the summer of 2010 if she had made financial provisions for her two daughters. Have you set up life insurance for them? And Betsy tells her dad that she wants to set it up, but she's worried that her two daughters, who are still really young at the time, they're like 16 and 19 years old at this point, but she's worried that they'll be irresponsible with the money.
Sure.
And she even tells her dad that she thinks that Russ, her husband, would be irresponsible with the money too. And just a little side note, you can get life insurance set up in a trust.
Well, I was about ready to say, why didn't she set it up in a trust?
I don't know, but if you put your life insurance into a trust, you can have the money paid out in annual installments over time. But I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just telling you, talk to your financial advisor or your attorney if you're ever worried about your life insurance policy and who's going to get it and how it gets paid out. I really, really wish that Betsy had spoken to a financial advisor or an attorney.
Right. Scotty's getting all of ours.
Oh, that's right. We tell the kids. Scotty's in the studio right now. He doesn't know it, but he's got lots of treats headed his way someday.
Sorry.
About a month later, Betsy asks her dad if he'll come with her to a chemo treatment. Now, I've never been to a chemotherapy treatment. I've seen them, I've read about them, but you're just basically in a chair. You're waiting it out while you're getting the treatment. You're just there.
Yeah.
And he does this, and he plans to chat with Betsy about how they can provide for her family after she's gone. But when Daddy Meyer arrives at the appointment, Pam is already there, and she won't leave Betsy's side. Like, she can't take the hint. My dad's here. We need to have a private conversation. Will you excuse us? Can you leave? Get the F out.
Does she have any reason or any explanation why she's always there?
She's a good friend. She's a great friend. She's a friend. Yes, she's a friend to Betsy.
Okay.
And Pam didn't like other people taking care of Betsy. And Ken Meyer has said, Betsy's dad has said, from that moment forward, Pam always took Betsy to her treatments, whether Betsy wanted her to or not. It's almost like Pam didn't want anybody else getting close to Betsy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah.
Now in the middle of the diagnosis and everything that's happening, Russ and Betsy move into a new home, something they'd been saving for, something they'd been wishing for. They buy and move into this house located in Troy, Missouri. Betsy keeps up with her chemo treatments, as does Pam, obviously.
Right.
And about a year later, Betsy's finished with chemo and she wants to celebrate, right? She's been told the cancer is in remission. She's had a mastectomy. She's done with chemo, and they're like, everything looks good.
She got to ring the bell and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, she's been told that her cancer is in remission.
Right.
So to celebrate, she wants to go on a cruise. She's calling it her, quote, celebration of life.
Okay.
And it's going to take place in November of 2011. She wants her close friends and family to go on this cruise with her. But just a month before the cruise, Betsy finds out that the cancer has spread to her liver. It's almost like, here, this is great news, not so fast.
Right, right.
I mean, which was just devastating. She's also told that she probably doesn't have a whole lot of time left. And she's so upset about this, as is her husband, Russ. But they decide to go on the cruise anyway, and I'm pretty sure she didn't tell anybody on the cruise what was going on. She kept this to herself.
Wow.
And went on the cruise and decided she was going to have a good time. And Russ made sure that she got to do something that was on her bucket list, which was to swim with the dolphins.
Okay.
Which I think is very sweet. I think it's really sweet. It was just a whole slew of family and friends all out having a great time and celebrating Betsy in her life.
Okay.
But not Pam. Pam Hupp did not go on the cruise.
Okay.
No one seems to know why, because Pam had inserted herself into Betsy's life in every other possible way, and it all seemed like she was really pushy about all of it. You know, she had to be there for everything. But I also read that Pam was cheapity cheap.
I was about ready to say she probably didn't go because nobody was paying for it.
I actually wrote in my notes, she wouldn't give a nickel to see Jesus riding a bicycle. She is cheap. This is a cheap woman. Now, everybody had a great time on the cruise, and Betsy really enjoyed herself. And when they got back to Missouri, it was time for the holidays. And Betsy was determined that she was going to enjoy every single moment she had left. She is back in chemotherapy. It is wrecking her body. And on top of all of this, Betsy comes home from the cruise, and Pam is there every single day. So like before, maybe she was just at chemo treatments. But now that she's got a new diagnosis and the cancer has spread to her liver, Pam spends a part of every single day with Betsy. Every damn day.
Good Lord.
Nobody needs to see that much of someone.
No, you don't even like to see me that much. That's why I stay downstairs in the studio. I'm just kidding.
Happy wife, happy life.
There you go, baby. As long as I empty the dishes.
But Pam's, you do a good job of that. But Pam spends basically every waking moment with Betsy. And on December 22nd, 2011, Pam goes to Betsy's tennis club to watch her play. And I read that and I thought, you go, girl. You're in the middle of a new cancer diagnosis and chemo, and you're still playing tennis with your friends.
Yeah.
Like, she just wanted to live her life and love everybody.
Of course.
Then the next day, December 23rd, Pam and Betsy go to the library in Wing Haven, Missouri. All of these areas are just on the outskirts of St. Louis, like 20 miles, 30 miles, right? Okay. Wing Haven, Missouri. It's about a half hour south of where they live in Troy. But Pam and Betsy go to the library, and while they're there, Betsy has a young librarian and notary witness her signature on a change of beneficiary form. It removed Russ as the beneficiary of a life insurance policy and instead made Pam Hupp the sole beneficiary of the policy. $150,000.
Wait a minute. So they saw Betsy sign it, or
Yes. The librarian witnesses the signature.
Okay, and they're sure it's Betsy.
They're sure it's Betsy.
Okay.
Yeah. But hinky, right?
Yeah, hinky's an understatement.
Yeah. And after you sign over your $150,000 life insurance policy to your so-called friend, what do? Well, Pam drives it straight to the post office and mails it.
Wow.
And just for the sake of accuracy, I want everybody to know Betsy did have 2 insurance policies, and the other one was for $100,000, and Russ was indeed still the beneficiary.
So do we know why she signed it over to?
We're going to know why.
Okay, all right.
We're going to know why, because remember I said she told her dad, I worry that the girls are too young and they'll blow through the money.
Okay.
And I'm worried that Russ will blow through the money. But yet, she doesn't change the beneficiary form on the second one.
So she's thinking Pam's going to be sort of the escrow.
The gatekeeper. The gatekeeper. Will you take care of my daughters? Will you make sure that they don't blow through the money?
Escrow Pam is her new name.
Yeah, and Pam is Pam likes to think of herself as like a business person, and she likes to tell everybody that everybody thinks she's so smart. We'll get into that, but yeah.
Right.
It's Christmas, and Betsy is enjoying every moment with her mother and her girls and her husband, Russ.
Okay.
Then on Tuesday, December 27th, 2011, Pam shows up at Betsy's mother's apartment. Betsy is there visiting her mom. In fact, she had spent the night with her the night before because she knew she had a chemo treatment the next day.
Okay.
So she just spent the night because she was already there. And Pam shows up to take Betsy to her treatment. And when Pam arrives, Betsy is gone. Betsy had texted Pam earlier, letting her know that her good family friend Bobby Wann, W-A-N-N, who used to be her babysitter, was actually in town, and Bobby took Betsy to her treatment.
Okay.
And Betsy sent a text to Pam that said, quote, Bobby is going and I want to spend some one-on-one time with her. End quote. What does that say to you?
I'm saying that went over like poop in a punch bowl.
I know, but what does that say? It is poop in a punch bowl, but she's saying, I want to spend some one-on-one time with her. So what do you think Betsy is saying to Pam?
I don't want you here.
I don't want you to come. I want to be alone with Bobby.
Right.
And Pam texts back, bummer.
Okay.
Bummer. Pam says she did not get this text, nor did she say she sent a reply. She does. Bummer is her reply.
Right.
But she's going to say, oh, I didn't get that text. And yeah.
Well, don't they have proof that she sent it?
Yeah, it's right there. But you're going to find out that she contradicts everything. But here's what Pam does. Pam drives to Siteman Cancer Center in St. Peter's and proceeds to sit with Betsy and Bobby during the treatment.
Wow.
And Betsy is shocked to see her show up because she'd sent the text, told her not to come, what the heck and heck. And Pam is still inserting herself into every little nook and cranny of Betsy's life.
So which is worse, the cancer or Pam?
Well, the cancer didn't kill her.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
Okay, all right.
Now, Betsy's husband, Russ, liked his bro time.
Right.
And he liked his mama. And he liked his mama and me time. And he would have dinner with his mother at least one night a week. It was usually on Tuesday, which I think is very sweet.
Okay.
But he also had a game night with his friends, with the guys. And on this particular Tuesday night, Russ is only having a bro night.
Okay.
Because he's got errands to run, he needs to get gas for his car, he needs to get food for the dog. And so he calls his mom at 5:22 p.m. and he says, I'm not coming over for dinner. And at 5:56, he stops at a convenience store in Lake St. Louis and buys a carton of cigarettes and 2 bottles of iced tea. And I saw in one source where they were Snapples, but I also saw the crime scene photos, and they are, in fact, Lipton Brisks.
Ooh.
So get it straight. Details.
I would have had more respect for them if they were Snapples.
Yeah.
Okay.
After this, he goes to Greens County store and he buys a bag of dog food. Now, game night is from 6 to 9 p.m. at his buddy Mike Corbin's house. And later, his plan is to pick up his wife, Betsy, from her mother's house and to take her home. That's the plan. But Betsy has texted Russ earlier that day to say that Pam is going to bring her home. And so he leaves the front door unlocked for Betsy before he leaves.
Okay.
But Betsy has texted Russ earlier that day to say Pam is going to bring her home. And so he leaves the front door to the house unlocked when he leaves.
All right.
Russ arrives at Mike Corbin's house in O'Fallon, Missouri, another suburb of St. Louis, a little after 6. And these grown men play role-playing board games like Dungeons and Dragons. And there are others, too. I could never find, the actual name of what they played, but if it's Dungeons and Dragons was the one that I could think of.
So role-playing games.
Yes, but on this particular night, right after Christmas, one of the regular guys couldn't come, and they wouldn't play the game without him. So instead, on this night, they're going to watch movies, and they're going to smoke a little weed. And they watch Conan the Destroyer. Nothing like a good Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Yeah.
And then they watched The Road, the post-apocalyptic movie with Viggo Mortensen.
Definitely a bro night.
Yeah, that's depressing. I don't know. I mean, if you had the after Christmas blues, I don't think I'd be watching the post-apocalyptic, The Road. That movie's pretty depressing. But they didn't make it all the way through the second movie.
Okay.
Everybody sort of yeets out. And he says goodbye. He heads home. It's about 9 o'clock.
Okay.
But because he skipped out on dinner with his mama, and he's probably got the munchies from the weed,
right.
Russ does what anybody would do. He hits Arby's drive-thru for some roast beef sandwiches.
Roast beef and cheese, baby.
Which made me think, favorite late-night food. If you're eating, you know it's bad for you, you don't care, what's the go-to?
Skyline chili.
Oh, my God.
90% of the people won't know what that is. But if you do know what Skyline Chili is. By the way, I want to thank the people who referenced the jerk.
In the last episode?
Yeah. Thank you for
now
recognizing
everybody's going to be talking about Skyline Chili.
Oh, best chili in the world.
There you have it.
Sorry,
Yep.
didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah. Well, no, I asked. Favorite,
Yeah.
Your favorite go-to, because you know it's bad for you.
Well, in college, it was White Castle also.
Well, but a lot of that was because it was the only place that was open late.
It was true.
See, we're older, and the younger kids now, everything's open 24 hours now.
True.
So it's kind of like, you go wherever. I would think, Taco Bell.
Yeah.
Taco Bell. That would be,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love you, Taco Bell.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying it's bad for you. Well, it might be, but yeah, Taco Bell.
Well, after a night of partying, you're already destroyed, so why not just
you
go for broke?
But he got himself a couple of beef and cheddars, and he doesn't get anything to drink because he's got his Lipton Brisk teas in the back. And I'm telling you the truth. He does. He gets one of those Lipton Brisk teas out and drinks it.
Nice.
And when Russ arrives home at 130 Sumac Drive, it's about 9:45.
Okay.
9:45. He's left at 9 p.m. Takes him 45 minutes. He's 20-some miles away from his home. He comes in through the unlocked front door. He's carrying the sack of dog food.
Okay.
Here's the layout of the house. Front door, small foyer. There's a set of stairs to the basement on the left, as well as a door to the garage, and the living room that opens up on the right-hand side. And beyond that is the dining room, which also leads into the kitchen.
Okay.
So Russ drops the dog food by the door, right next to the garage. He takes off his leather jacket. He puts it on the chair to the right of the entrance in the living room. He calls out for Betsy. He looks into the living room where there are still Christmas presents sitting around and the room's still filled with all the Christmas decorations. And if that house is anything like our house, like 2 days after Christmas, because this is the 27th of December.
Right.
There's crap everywhere.
Pretty much.
There are like presents that you didn't get to somebody. And then there's things that need to be taken back. And
basically, it looks like Santa Claus detonated.
Yeah, it's just, you have stuff everywhere. And that's basically what was going on in their house. And then Russ sees her. Betsy is on the floor in front of the sofa in this weird contorted pose. She's lying in a pool of dark red, almost black blood
that is
staining the beige carpet. She's lying on her right side with the front of her body twisted downward until her left shoulder is almost touching the floor.
Wow.
Beneath her is a pink comforter with flowers. She's wearing a black t-shirt, blue yoga pants with orange and white stripes down the side of the legs, and green and white below the ankle socks.
Okay.
This is exactly what she had on when Russ last saw her. Her arms are crossed in front of her and bent at the elbows so that her hands are really close to her face. I'm like showing Rob right now, but
Yeah.
I mean, Russ sees her and he starts screaming her name, Betsy, Betsy. He falls to the floor and he can see that her face is covered in dark blood. Her brown hair is also matted in blood. There's a lot of blood. This is a brutal scene. There's a deep gash across the inside of her upturned right forearm near her wrist, and this is when Russ sees it. The black handle of a steak knife
Ouch.
is sticking out of the left side of Betsy's neck.
Ooh.
Her eyes are closed, her tongue's protruding between her lips. Her right wrist is slashed down to the tendon and bone.
Wow.
Russ realizes she's dead. It's now that he realizes that she's gone. And Russ thinks she's committed suicide. And here's why. Betsy had threatened to kill herself before, more than once. She was even hospitalized once after she told a cop on a traffic stop that she wanted a gun to kill herself. And once she'd even pulled a knife during an argument with Russ and threatened to kill herself. And with her recent terminal diagnosis and all the chemotherapy and her constant struggle with depression, Russ is thinking she's reached her breaking point and she's done it. She's committed suicide. He is devastated.
Right.
Now, he wants to cradle Betsy in his arms, but he knows that if he touches her, he could create problems for the police when they get to the scene. And I read this and it got me to thinking, I've done enough research, written enough books about people getting murdered and doing this podcast. And I think, what would you do? And I don't think you'd really know until you're put into this situation because, okay, you happen upon this dead body, not someone you know. Do you touch anything? No way. But what if it's your loved one?
Right.
That's a different story, right?
Yeah. And that's one of the situations you don't know what's going to...
You don't know what you do until you were
Exactly.
put into that situation.
Right.
And Russ does not touch Betsy's body. At 9:40, he calls 911. He's in shock, but not so much shock that he remembers that he needs to call 911 from a landline so police can find the correct address.
Okay.
He goes to the kitchen, he calls 911, and he gets dispatcher Tammy Vaughn on the phone. Russ is hysterical, and in between crying and shouting and sobbing, he tells her, quote, I just got home from a friend's house and my wife killed herself. She's on the floor, end quote.
Wow.
Now, Tammy tells him they have people on the way, but she's asking all the questions, right? Is she breathing? No. When Tammy asks where the knife is now, Russ loses his mind because he's coming to terms with the idea that Betsy is really dead. And he screams at her, it's still in her. It's in her neck. And he's shouting this, okay?
Wow.
There's a whole 911 call. I will post it in the In-Laws and Outlaws group, but he is very, very distraught. And this is going to be important later.
Okay.
Now, Deputy Chris Hollingsworth from the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department is the first to arrive on the scene. He takes one look at Betsy's body and he knows this is not a suicide. This was a murder. He tells Russ to step outside because he doesn't want him contaminating the crime scene. Russ is shivering in the cold. He's chain smoking. He's trying to answer questions. They sit Russ down. They ask Russ about why is the dog chained up outside behind the house? And Russ tells the police that it's really unusually for Cicely, that's the name of their dog,
Right.
to be outside, that the dog goes outside to go to the bathroom and then comes back in. But he mostly stays inside because there's not a fence for the house. So when he's outside, the dog is on a chain,
Sure.
which means somebody put the dog on the chain.
Right.
And it wasn't him, wasn't Russ.
Right.
Sheriff's detectives Mike Merkel and Patrick Harney take Russ to the station so he can give a, quote, statement. I have my air quotes up because this is actually going to become an hours-long interrogation.
Yeah, because he's a suspect now.
He is, but he has no idea because he is in shock. He
Sure.
has seen this scene. You'd be in shock even if it wasn't someone that you loved.
Sure.
But this is his wife, and they're going to make this a living hell for this man. Meanwhile, back at the crime scene, police are discovering that Betsy's body is a train wreck of injuries. So much so that the medical examiner's office will say it's hard to establish a single cause of death or a time of death. She had over 50 stab wounds,
Wow.
including her wrists slashed to the bone and, of course, the knife in her neck. And Betsy had been stabbed through her left eye and into her skull.
Oh, man.
She had been stabbed to death, and the fire captain and the EMS think that 42-year-old Betsy had been dead for about an hour before Russ ever called 911.
Well, then that's in his favor.
You would think, because where's he been? He has an alibi.
Yeah.
He has friends. He's been to Arby's.
Right.
Yeah, you would think. Just hang on.
Okay.
The authorities are looking at Russ because who kills their spouse? The other spouse.
Right, right.
Yeah. They're immediately suspicious of Russ Faria. He was emotional, but he really didn't have many tears flowing. That's because he's in shock.
Right.
If you've ever met anybody who's in shock after a horrible thing has happened,
Right.
it's not like they're bawling. They're going to go, it's just a myriad of emotions. They're going to be all over the place. He would go from being really calm to breaking down, and then he would scream.
Right.
Like he was trying to process everything. And the officer says, quote, "Why didn't you embrace your wife's body when you saw it lying in the pool of blood?" End quote. Because something not lost on anyone is the fact that Russ doesn't have a drop of blood on his person. Not one, not at all.
Right.
She has 55 stab wounds.
He's clean.
He's got not one drop of blood on his body
or
his clothes.
He's got a solid alibi, and he has no blood on him.
Yes.
But yet he's still the primary suspect.
Yes.
Okay.
But the police they really want Russ to be the killer.
Sure.
They're
Wrap it up.
Yeah, wrap this up. We're a small town. But
We got our man.
We've had a big murder, but we're going to solve it, and it's Russ Faria. When police start searching the house, they find a pair of house slippers with blood on them. Not on the bottom of the slippers, on the side of the slippers. They're men's house slippers. They're in the back of the closet. So while Russ is in the interrogation room for 10 hours, I might add, they ask him over and over, and he tells them over and over the events of his entire day, December 27th. He keeps telling them he wasn't there. He has no idea what happened to his wife or why she would want to kill herself. He's still in this mindset of she did
committed
this to
suicide.
herself.
Right.
Yeah. And he tells police, "I was supposed to go to my mother-in-law's house to pick up Betsy, but her friend took her home. She texted me and told me not to come and get her from her mother's house because her friend Pam was going to take her home."
Okay.
Russ tells them Pam Hupp is the last person who would have seen Betsy Faria alive. Now, if you're a police officer and someone says the last person to see the victim alive is Pam Hupp,
Right.
wouldn't you want to talk to Pam right
Sure.
away?
1 + 1 = what?
Well, apparently 5 in
Yeah.
this case.
Okay.
So while police are busy interrogating Russ, the new beneficiary forms have arrived at the State Farm office. Remember, they signed them. She put them directly into the mail.
Yep.
The morning after Betsy is found dead, and this is going to be an important point later, the papers show up in the insurance office.
Okay.
And the insurance agent decided to accept it, even though he knew Betsy had been murdered the night before and she was dead. It's a small town.
Wow.
I mean, that's cutting it close. And I guess it is up to the individual agent, and he exercised his right to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And Russ and Betsy's family has no idea that the beneficiary form has been changed on her policy. They have zero idea that this has happened.
Wow.
They have no clue. December 28th, the day after Betsy's murder, police go to the home of Pam Hupp.
Right.
It's 6:40 in the morning when they knock on her door. She answers. Her hair is still wet from the shower. Pam's going to tell people that she took a shower the night before, too. She's had 2 showers.
Okay.
Pam has this bleach blonde hair, by the way. She's a little chunky. She's 53 years old. And Pam speaks with detectives for 3 hours.
Okay.
Now, if you've seen the show on NBC, Renee Zellweger, I've seen the actual interviews with Pam Hupp, and Renee does a good Hollywood version. She's maybe not as Minnesota as Pam
Miss
Hupp.
Pam.
Yeah, she's more Missouri accent.
Okay.
She does a great job. She really does capture the essence
Right.
of Pam Hupp. Yeah. So she's going to speak with these detectives who come to her house for 3 hours. Detective Stephanie Kaiser and Sergeant Perry Smith, they break the news to Pam that her BFF Betsy is dead. They don't say how she died or even if it was an accident or if it was natural causes, just that she is dead. And Pam sobs and her voice is shaking while she tells these two that she'd known Betsy for 11 years and that she saw her every day. And when they ask Pam if she and Betsy were best friends, Pam tells them, quote, Betsy had a lot of best friends. And then she chuckles, zillions of best friends. But yes, I saw her almost every day or every other day, end quote. And these two detectives want to know what Pam knows about Betsy's last day. And Pam starts crying again, tells them Betsy spent Monday night at her mother's place, and Pam had planned to pick her up there and drive her Tuesday to her chemo treatment at 1:30. But Betsy texted that morning and said she was getting a ride from a friend that Pam only knew as Bobby.
Okay.
Bobby was in from Texas, wanted to spend time with Betsy. Pam decides to join the two of them for the chemo session anyway and drives to Betsy's mom's, but Betsy is already gone. So she goes to the chemo session, and after, Pam turns down an invitation to go to the Lion's Choice restaurant to eat because she wanted to go home for dinner with her husband, Mark.
Okay.
But after that, she drove back to Betsy's mom's place and waited until Betsy was ready for her to drive her home. This is a ton of driving back and forth and back and forth.
I'm trying to follow this.
And back and forth, right. Then Pam tells the police that Betsy stays at her mom's on most weekdays. Why? Quote, a lot of it, she didn't like the drive, and a lot of it, she didn't like going home, end quote.
Oh, man.
When they ask her why she didn't want to go home, Pam replies, a lot of it was her husband, end quote. Pam tells the police the depressing story about the Faria's marriage and Russ's behavior. Quote, they'd been separated, 6, 7 times all through the years that I've known her. I don't know him that well. I've only met him maybe 3 times in 10 years. He doesn't come to, functions and stuff. As far as her friends, it was just her. He's not that nice verbally to her. He makes us uncomfortable sometimes, end quote.
Setting him up.
She is setting him up like nobody's business.
Yep.
And when they ask her if she's ever heard Russ to be unkind to Betsy verbally, she replies, quote, oh, yeah, he's kind of pompous. I mean, he seems nice enough. I just don't know him that well. The last time I saw him was at her 40th birthday party that he had for her. I think that was the last time I ever really talked to him. No, I take that back. I was at her house last week. She wanted to make me lunch. He works in the house, and I went down to say hi to him, end quote. And then Pam tells police that he'd given her directions to their house at one point, and when he asked her why it had taken her so long to get there, Pam told him that she was unfamiliar with the neighborhood, and this is what she says Russ says to her, quote, oh, you women are such asses, end quote. Pam goes on to tell police that Betsy was thinking about leaving Russ, and she talked about it often. She said that Betsy and a cousin named Linda were both thinking about leaving their husbands and moving into a place together in Branson, Missouri, and working at a college there. Okay. Which to me is she's in the middle of chemotherapy with her doctors here and not in Branson.
Yeah.
It's important to note that Pam's account of Betsy wanting to leave Russ is the only story of its kind because everyone else, friends, people at their church, people in their marriage group at church, they all said that Betsy and Russ were doing great, especially on the heels of her recent diagnosis that her cancer had come back even after she thought she'd beaten it.
So they're buying everything that Pam is saying.
They're buying everything that Pam is saying, and anything that Russ says, they're saying, that's a lie. Just wait. We're going to get to his interrogation.
Wow, it's scary.
But here's Pam's account of the night of December 27th. She went to Betsy's mom's house. Her name is Janet. She goes to Janet's house around 5:15 to pick up Betsy and take her home. But Betsy was playing a board game with her mother and Bobby, her friend who's in from Texas. Pam guesses that it was after 6 when she and Betsy left her mom's apartment. She guesses it's after 6.
Okay.
Pam called her husband, Mark, after they pulled into Betsy's driveway to let him know she'd made it from Janet's house to Betsy's. And here's why. Pam's told everybody that she doesn't drive well in the dark, and she tells police that she doesn't drive at night too much. Mark doesn't answer the call because he's left his phone in his truck. She leaves him a voicemail, and in the voicemail, Pam tells Betsy to say something. So she says, "Merry Christmas and Happy New Year." And it's one of the many steps Pam is taking to give herself an alibi and a timestamp.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's planned this whole thing out.
But here's the thing. She's like saying, "Hey, I'm here." She says, "Hey, Mark, we're here." And then she says, "Betsy wants to talk to you." Because
Yeah.
you can hear the voicemail.
Wow.
And Betsy's like, "Merry Christmas, Happy New Year." And that is Pam's way of saying, this is what time it is. Betsy's alive.
Right.
Here are her words. Police asked Pam if she went inside. Pam says, quote, "No, I helped her. It was weird because we drove up and the reason she said she didn't have a car was because Russ had it. We drove up and the car was in the garage or in the driveway, so we thought he was home. I said, well, there's no lights on. Maybe he took another car." And she goes, "No, he said he was taking my car," end quote.
Okay.
The car she's talking about is a silver Maxima. Pam tells police, quote, "I say, do you want me to walk you to the door?" And she says, "Yes." So I walked her up to the door and in until she could get a light on. And then she got the front light on. And she walked in and she turned on the living room light and called for him. And he wasn't there. Nobody answered, end quote. And police say, "Did you actually go into the house?" And Pam says, quote, "I did. I took her in," end quote. So right off the bat, Pam's story has changed in a matter of 5 minutes.
Right.
She said, "I didn't go in the house." Then she went into the house. Then she just wanted to make sure the lights were on. Then she's in the living room.
Right.
And hang on to your drawers because it just keeps getting better and better.
I'm hanging.
A few statements later, Pam says she turned on the light after she said that Betsy turned on the light. This story places Pam in the living room where Betsy's going to be found dead at the precise time she says she would have been murdered.
Okay.
Pam then tells police that Betsy put the dog in the backyard because he was jumping on them and driving them nuts while they stood there talking. Okay, so you spent enough time there. You didn't just drop her off and turn on the light. Now you're there long enough that the dog is bothering you, and she takes the dog out and puts him out in the backyard on the chain.
Right.
And when Detective Smith asks, "How long were you there?" 10, 20 minutes, Pam says, quote, "It could be, yeah. I wasn't really paying attention. I was just trying to get out of there," end quote. Then she tells detectives that when she left, she called her husband again. And when they ask where was she when she made that call, Pam pauses, quote, "Actually, I don't think I called him. I called Betsy when I got home or was on my way home, almost home. I'm trying to think which one I called. I called Betsy. That's right. I called Betsy to tell her I was home," end quote. And when they ask if she answered, Pam says no, quote, which isn't unusual for her if she's on the other line, end quote.
Okay.
And a detective asks if she left a message, and Pam says, quote, "I think, yeah, I did, yeah, that I was home or almost home," end quote.
Okay.
Pam then says she called and texted Betsy again later that evening, but never talked to her again. Pam said she was worried because Betsy's white blood count was low and she was feeling bad from her chemo treatment. Pam said she called Betsy's mom to express her concern, but here's the thing. Pam didn't stay with her, and Pam tells police that Betsy asked her to stay with her and watch movies until Russ came home from his Tuesday night with the guys. And Pam tells police that she just wanted to go home and told Betsy that she should go to bed. So she's worried about her friend and her white blood cell count because she doesn't feel well.
Right.
And she didn't go in, but then she did go in, but then she wasn't there, but then she was there long enough for the dog to go out back. But she didn't stay, even though her friend asked her to stay.
It's clear as mud is what you're saying.
It's clear as mud. And so Pam tells police that she just wanted to go home and that Betsy should go to bed. Quote, "So I just, I left her and she was sitting on the couch. She had a blanket on her and she was going to watch TV," end quote. And where was Betsy killed? Right by the couch, wrapped up in a blanket.
Right.
Now, Pam's going to change her story again later and say that she actually went into the bedroom of Betsy and Russ because Betsy wanted to show her a new jewelry box or something that she got for Christmas.
Okay.
Then again later, she's going to say that Betsy walked her to the door.
Okay.
She's going to say that she left Betsy wrapped up on the couch. Betsy walked her to the door. Every story is different.
So for a person that planned this obvious murder out to a T as far as timing and when she was going to do it and all, she just completely obliterates her story.
Yes, and if you're a police officer, if you're a detective
Yeah.
listening to this, you're like, she's full of
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pam gets her phone for the police and she shows them a record of her calls from that night. Tuesday, December 24th, 7:04, she called Mark, her husband. The call to Betsy after she left was at 7:27. It's only then that Pam tells police, at their prompting, that she was close to home when she made the 7:27 call.
Okay.
Were you home when you made this call? And she says, quote, "Oh, yeah, when I was close to home," end quote. When they asked, "Do you remember where you were when you made the call? Were you on the road? Were you still at home?" And Pam says, quote, "Oh, I was on the road. Actually, I called her because she's afraid I always get lost in Troy and it's really dark. So actually, I was still in Troy and said I either say I'm on my way or I'm home already so she wouldn't worry," end quote.
Okay.
Then she changes the story again, telling police that at one point she pulled over to a fork in the road to make the call to Betsy.
Okay.
Pam said when she got home, she called her son, who lived nearby, and she also texted Betsy. Then Pam showered and was concerned that there was no response from Betsy. Pam's phone showed that she called Betsy's mother at 8:52, asking her to check on Betsy. Pam's worried. Her mother, Janet, Betsy's mother, Janet, tries to call. She gets no answer.
Okay.
Now, they see all the texts from earlier in the day between Betsy and Pam where Betsy tells Pam not to come to her chemo session. And then Pam offers up this story, something she calls a, quote, "complicated controversy," end quote.
Why is it complicated?
She tells police that there was a scenario where they would buy a house once owned by her mother and father, that Betsy would buy a house once owned by her mother and father, a place where Betsy's sister was living with her family. But they hadn't been making the payments, and the house was about to be foreclosed. And Pam says that Betsy and Russ would buy the house and live in the downstairs with Betsy's daughters, and her mother Janet and friend Bobby would live upstairs. And the Farias could rent out their house in Troy to generate income toward Russ's recent goal of retiring and living in Florida. And this is the point where Pam says that Betsy mentioned that she was upset that they were living in Troy because the house in Troy was in Russ's name only, and he referred to it as, quote, his house.
Okay.
So they're looking through her text messages, and all of a sudden, Pam comes up with this whole story about how Betsy wanted to buy this house that her sister was living in because they weren't making the payments and, you know, it was going to be foreclosed. And I'm sure Pam is like saying, this is how you could get it and flip it or have it, and you can pay the mortgage by renting out the house in Troy,
Okay.
which is 20 miles away.
Right.
And oh, by the way, Russ calls it his house.
Okay.
So
this whole story, this scenario is verified.
no, none of this is verified.
That's kind of my point. It's
Yeah.
like, does the detective, are they looking at this story as being for
No,
real?
they're just listening to her diarrhea of the mouth.
Wow.
But she's telling this story because she wants to say Russ called the house in Troy
Right.
his house,
Right.
and Betsy didn't like it.
Right.
Pam tells police that Betsy didn't like living in Troy, and it would make him, quote, very angry, end quote, to consider moving out of that house. Pam said that Betsy didn't like being, quote, stuck in Troy with Russ and stayed away from their house as much as possible. Quote, she told me she doesn't like to go there on the weekends because, you know, sometimes he's in a good mood. They do a lot of things together, but he's very degrading to her. He makes comments about how much money he'll have after she's gone because he's got, this is what she said, I don't know for sure. I haven't seen the financials, but he's got life insurance on her at work. She's got life insurance, end quote.
Wow.
And Pam goes on to say that it's not uncommon for her to be away from Russ, that she goes to Branson as much as she can to get away with the girls. And Pam says, I've been through all of their separations. And then she says, quote, he is, according to her, verbally mean to her, end quote.
Wow.
Then Pam suddenly backs off and says that she doesn't really know the guy, but she continues with, quote, I know him enough. A couple of times I've seen him. He is pompous. Women are like, he's a know-it-all. But I know a lot of guys like that. He smokes in the house even though she's sick, and he doesn't care, end quote.
Wow.
And then the detectives are like, so you're saying he's disrespectful? And Pam says, quote, oh, he's very disrespectful, very disrespectful. He'll say disrespectful things. Ha ha, she's laughing. She gets her feelings hurt a lot, and she just doesn't care to be around him. She's tired of the talk about what he's going to have when she's gone, and she's got real tired of that. She was afraid to be there on the weekends with him, end quote.
Wow.
So now Pam has gone from he was just a Mr. Man, pompous asshole.
That she didn't know very well.
That she didn't know very well, to Betsy was afraid of him.
Right.
So Pam's building this case against Russ for the police. He's this menacing potential killer. Then Pam tells police that when she was with Betsy at her tennis club just a week prior, Betsy had written a message to Pam. It was, quote, something Russ was saying to her that was really disturbing to her, end quote. Pam tells police that Betsy wasn't able to send it to her because it was not in the body of an email, but on a, quote, form on her computer. She also said that she was afraid to email it to Pam because Russ had been looking through her emails and she couldn't print it because the printer was in Russ's home office. Pam tells the detectives that she never saw this document, but Betsy had hinted at what it was.
And it was?
That's called foreshadowing. Then Pam says, quote, she did say that the last weekend she was with him that he started playing this game of putting a pillow over her face to see what it would feel like. Quote, this isn't what it's going to feel like when you die or whatever,
God,
and then
Lord.
act like he was kidding. She was very upset, end quote.
Wow.
So Pam's telling police that he's actually putting a pillow over Betsy's face, pretending to murder her. And police asked Pam if this frightened Betsy. Did she sound scared when she was telling you this story? And Pam says, oh, yeah, she was very scared. But then she would laugh. And that's why she didn't really, toward the end there, she did not want to go home. She's been sleeping on couches for months, end quote.
And they're not going to check into that.
She's all over
Wow.
the place.
Wow.
This is why it is so, and I really, really wanted everybody to hear this testimony because she is so all over the place, and the police are taking this as gospel.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Hook, line, and sinker. Police ask if Betsy had talked about divorcing Russ, and Pam says yes. She wanted to live with her mom, and that Betsy had said that she knew Russ would be angry about the idea of moving into her mother's house and renting out their house in Troy because, according to Pam, Russ was not leaving his house. Quote, it's his house,
Right.
end quote.
Right.
Pam has single-handedly built a case against Russ as an abusive husband who wants to cash in on the death of his wife, a guy who would torture his wife by putting a pillow over her face, and what police can see is some kind of test run for murder. And Pam even tells the cops that the trigger point that would have set Russ off on his murderous spree, that Betsy wanted to abandon the house and move in with her family 25 miles away from Troy. So that's what she's saying.
Okay.
That was the complicated controversy.
Wow. That took some thought to come up with that whole scenario.
Yeah.
Wow. She's just,
And the police are eating it up.
yeah.
And Pam tells police that she and Betsy had worked together for over 10 years. She tells police that Russ had a fixation on money and all the money he would have when Betsy died. And he wanted to buy a motorcycle from his uncle that Betsy said they couldn't afford at the time.
Okay.
Pam tells police that Betsy had told her that Russ was getting really creepy and kind of making her nervous with the pillow. Quote, you know, and I don't know what else he was doing. She was just saying he was making her feel really creepy. Like she would turn around and he would just be staring at her. And then again talk about, you know, wow, what he's going to have. And he wanted to trade his motorcycle in. That kind of stuff.
Wow.
End quote.
Man.
Pam tells police that she suggested that Betsy should change the beneficiary on her policies to her mother. But Betsy said that her mother would not handle the money properly, and she was sure that her daughters would blow the money if they were the beneficiaries. But she said she might consider Pam's suggestion to make the beneficiary Betsy's sister, Mary Rogers.
Okay.
Of course, she doesn't. She makes the beneficiary Pam.
How convenient.
And then when it happens, Pam says that Betsy turned to her and said, quote, would you be my beneficiary on my life insurance policies and make sure my kids get it when they need it? End quote. And I said, quote, well, I could. I don't feel real comfortable with that, but she goes, well, I can't trust my mom because she'll give it to the kids. And I said, I guess, you know, to me, it's no big deal. Whatever, end quote.
It's not that big of a deal.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Pam tells police that Betsy had thought it through. She called her the week before she went to Branson on Wednesday, December 14th, and on Friday, December 16th, and asked her to meet at the nearby Wing Haven Public Library, where Betsy surprised Pam by producing a change of beneficiary form on the policy with State Farm. So Pam's acting like, I was totally taken off guard by this.
I was just along for the ride. I had nothing to do with this. Yeah.
Pam tells police, she said, I'm going to make you the beneficiary. If I could, when my daughters are older, give them some money. And I said, okay, well, how much is it for? And Betsy said $150,000. And I said, well, Russ is going to know. I'm just assuming he would know if you changed it. And she said, no, the policy's in my name and I have the right to do what I want and I get to pick the beneficiaries. He's never going to know. She was real freaked out about him getting all this money, end quote. Pam tells police that she and Betsy sat at a table near some windows at the library and filled out the form to change the beneficiary to Pam. And they took the form to the front desk and asked a girl named Lauren Manganelli to sign and witness Betsy's signature.
Okay.
And Pam tells police she has no idea if Betsy filed the form with the insurance company before she died.
Okay.
Lies, 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 because Pam put it in the mail.
Sure.
Pam doesn't think Betsy would have time to follow through on the second step in her plan, which was to keep the insurance money away from Russ by changing the beneficiary on the second policy for $100,000 to her friend and relative named Linda.
Okay.
So let's just take a step back for a second.
It's so confusing.
I know. Pam has given herself motive and opportunity to murder her friend Betsy Faria.
Right.
She makes herself a suspect while she's trying to frame Russ by creating this version of Russ as this horrible, horrible husband, right?
Right.
But now Pam has the same motive to kill Betsy that she's been saying was the motive that Russ wanted to kill Betsy.
Exactly.
Money, $150,000, free and clear.
Sure.
And Pam just keeps talking. She won't shut the up. Because Detective Smith has to take a bathroom break at 10 till 8 a.m., and she and Detective Kaiser talk about whether Pam is going to have to miss an appointment at 8:30 with her brother to take her mom, who Pam tells them has Alzheimer's, to her financial advisor to talk about stocks. So police hear Pam on the phone when she's talking to her brother because
Right.
she's supposed to meet him at 8:30.
Right.
It's 10 till 8.
Okay.
She calls her brother and she says that she can't make the appointment. And here's what she says to him. Quote, my friend, something happened to her last night, and I have 2 police officers here asking me questions. They just showed up at my door. I don't even know what happened, end quote.
Okay.
Now, she goes back to the police and keeps talking, and she keeps giving a motive for Russ to kill Betsy. Pam tells them that the Farias were struggling financially, that Betsy's DJ business was down. Pam had taken Betsy to get food stamps for her daughters because they had limited incomes, but she said she'd received a payment for her disability claim from Social Security and was expecting some money from her daughter's father, $20,000 in back child support from his Social Security payments.
Okay.
So Pam then tells police that Betsy still had a relationship with her ex-husband, Ron, but that she doesn't know Ron's last name. But Russ would know because Russ knows him. And then she says, quote, he, meaning Russ, doesn't know that they see each other. Not often, but they do. Betsy is funny. Betsy, how can I say this? My husband says Betsy is my little Hoosier friend, end quote.
Okay.
And she means this in a derogatory fashion. So you're going to find that she calls Russ a Hoosier. She says that Betsy's a Hoosier. But what she's saying is that they're rednecks. They're rednecks. They're hillbillies.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That's not what a Hoosier is, Pam.
No.
You know, I know lots of Hoosiers who proudly live in Indiana. There's a whole backstory where that name came from. I'm happy to share it with you,
I've worked with
Pam.
them. Yep.
Yeah, Pam. Pam's the new Karen. Pam.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry to all the Pams out there.
And all the Karens.
And all the Karens. But Pam tells police that Betsy would sleep with her ex-husband, Ron, to get things done around the house. Like if she needed something repaired, she'd sleep with Ron and he'd come fix it.
Wow.
Quote, he's always been there when she's fighting with Russ or if she says Russ doesn't give her sex. You know, Ron is there. I've met him about 3 times. It's just a weird arrangement. That's how Betsy is, end quote.
Wow.
So she's just spilling diarrhea of the mouth. I mean, am I wrong when I say that? Diarrhea of the mouth.
Yep.
Now, this whole time, Pam has been answering questions. She never asked the police, what happened to my best friend, Betsy?
Yeah.
I just saw her last night. What happened to her? How did she die?
Well, the fact that when she was talking to her brother and she said,
Exactly. And I'm about to talk about that.
there you go. I'm not as dumb as I look.
Sorry I said that. I was getting a little something to drink there and totally missed that. Detective Smith says, who do you think may have done this to Betsy? And Pam hesitates, and then she says, quote, you didn't tell me what happened to her. You said there was an accident or whatever, end quote.
She almost slipped.
And Detective Kaiser says, quote, no, she's not accidentally dead. She's not naturally dead. And Pam says, what does that mean? And Detective Kaiser tells her, well, let me ask you this, and I'm not trying to play word games with you, but we're trying to figure out what happened to your friend, okay? You understand that she's dead. I told you that. Pam says, quote, yeah, you told me that, end quote. They ask Pam if Betsy could have killed herself. And Pam says, no, we're Catholic. I don't think so. She's been depressed, but I don't think so. They ask Pam if she knows of anyone who would hurt Betsy. And Pam goes back to Russ, quote, just recently, she's been afraid of her husband, but that's been throughout the whole marriage. That's why they separate a lot, but, end quote. And then Pam says it, quote, maybe if you guys could find that letter she was going to send me, if she really has it or if she deleted it or whatever. She said she was going to talk to me about changing her beneficiaries to me and that he had started doing this weird thing with a pillow, but it just started happening, end quote.
Okay.
Then she tells police that Russ is nasty when he drinks. He's verbally nasty. She goes back to Betsy changing the beneficiary to say that she needed to give the money to someone who wasn't Russ, someone that Russ couldn't get it from. And when police point blank ask Pam if Russ could have done this, could he have killed Betsy? She says, quote, I don't know him well enough.
No.
And then she begins to debate with herself. I know there was something going on there. I'm not sure what it was. I don't know if she was getting ready to permanently leave him, but I can't imagine why he would. When I talk about it and I see how much she's been through in 10 years in a relationship, I can kind of see her stage that she's going through. But as far as him doing anything to her, I don't know why he would. He thinks he's going to get a lot of money. Unless she told him that he wasn't going to get a lot of money. I mean, they can get in some nasty fights. I don't know what happened last night when she talked to him. She was very excited to talk to him, end quote. And before the police leave, Pam asks, when did this happen? This morning? Now, remember when she's on the phone talking to her brother, she said something happened to my friend last night.
Last night, yeah.
And as the police are leaving, she's saying, when did this happen? This morning?
Right.
And the reason all of this is known is because it's all been recorded.
Yeah, it's all transcript.
Now, police talk to Pam for 2 hours and 24 minutes, and just before they leave, Pam wants to tell them another story about how Betsy had some Gatorade that was cloudy, like possibly someone wanted to poison Betsy.
What?
Like Russ wanted to maybe poison Betsy. And before they leave, they ask her again if Betsy ever talked about committing suicide. And Pam says, sure, she'd said, quote, I feel like I want to kill myself, but that she'd heard other friends say that in the past, and she didn't believe them either, end quote.
Okay.
Police leave, and then they come back asking for her phone, a DNA sample, and they want the clothes that Pam wore the night before. No one ever double checks to see if Pam gives them what she was actually wearing the night before. And they are never going to test Pam's DNA against anything.
Why?
And they're never going to check Pam's car for blood. They're not looking at Pam at all.
After all of this.
All of that testimony, all of that diarrhea of the mouth, everything she said, they're totally discounting it. Wow. And here's why. Because meanwhile, back at the police station, the police are literally berating Russ Faria. While Russ is telling police that he had nothing to do with his wife's death, he's grieving, he's in shock. He certainly has post-traumatic stress, and they have him take a lie detector test, a polygraph test at this moment, hours after he's found his dead wife in a pool of blood. It was 4 questions. 4. Are you telling the truth? Yes. Did you kill Betsy Faria? No. Did you kill Betsy Faria with a knife? No. Do you know for sure who killed Betsy Faria? No. And the test was over.
Right.
He failed. And police say to him, "You were not honest with us." And Russ says, "I was."
Right.
And here's what Gary McIntyre of the Troy Police Department says to him. He says, quote, "I don't want to go that route. I don't want to drag this thing out forever, okay? The fact of the matter is, you stabbed Betsy."
Wow.
Then he tells him, "We can help you if you confess. Let me explain." So this is what he says to him, quote, "Let me explain something to you, okay? We're dealing with one of two people right here. We're dealing with someone who lost it, made a mistake, and he's remorseful, or we're dealing with some kind of fucking monster. You tell us who we're dealing with. You tell us who you would rather a jury see.
Wow.
Okay? One of those two people. Hey, Russ, it's done. It's done. It's over."
Wow.
End quote.
Wow.
Russ Faria had 4 alibi witnesses, no blood on his clothing despite a very bloody crime scene. Cell phone towers are going to show he was nowhere near the scene when she died, as well as video evidence of him in several businesses around the time of the murder. Remember that.
Well, any defense lawyer is going to have a field day with this.
Yes, but hang on. When Russ says he did not murder his wife, McIntyre replies, quote, "We're past that. There's too much here." "Russ, you're a church-going man, correct? Well, God is in this room with us right now." And Russ says, "Yeah, God knows I didn't kill my wife."
There you go.
Then Detective Ray Floyd jumps in from the Troy Police Department and says, quote, "I want to believe you, but there's absolutely no way I can believe you after talking to those detectives and those crime scene people that processed the scene that relayed the trace evidence. She's already had an autopsy. There's too much stuff pointing right at you. It was a spur-of-the-moment thing, and I just need you to tell me what sparked the incident happening." End quote. When he says, "Who did it, Russ?" and he says, "I don't know," McIntyre yells, "Bullshit!"
Wow.
They tell him how many times Betsy's been stabbed. He's distraught. They tell him not to stick to his bullshit stories. They tell him to stop being stupid, to stop trying to convince himself that he didn't do it. They badger him all through the night, and by the next day, Russ was still proclaiming his innocence. When they say, "We know you did it," Russ says back, quote, "No, you think I did it," end quote.
Yeah.
And then they say, "All the evidence points to you." He had been interrogated for 18 hours straight.
And never broke.
He hadn't slept in 33 hours.
And never broke.
In the last 90 minutes of his interrogation, Russ said, "I didn't do this," 77 times.
Wow.
Dozens more he said that he was not lying. And finally, Russ says, quote, "I want a lawyer. I want a lawyer right now."
Good for
End
him.
quote.
Good for him.
McIntyre and Ryder walk out of the room, and Detective Floyd stands up and says, quote, "We understand. Stand up and put your hands behind your back," end quote. And at 4:36 p.m., December 28th, 21 hours after he finds his dead wife, Russ is put into handcuffs.
Wow.
Russ hears Floyd say to one of the other detectives, quote, "As soon as they want a lawyer, that means they're guilty."
Who is this guy?
End quote.
Oh my gosh, he makes Barney Fife look like FBI.
And that is the end of part 1.
Leave me hanging, baby.
I'm leaving you hanging, but that's all I have to say about that. Hey, Hitched to Homicide listeners. This is Chris Calvert. I love doing research and writing about real crimes, but I also love writing about fictional people who commit horrible atrocities. When you're ready to take a break from true crime for fictional crime, go to chriscalvert.com, where you'll find all my books, including some free ones to get you started. Jane Doe is one badass chick who quietly hunts terrorists in the United States. The Sex and Lies books are all FBI and CIA cases with a little romance on the side. And coming summer 2022, Book 10 in the series, Sex, Lies, and Rock and Roll, releases. You can find all of these books everywhere, and if you like to listen instead of read, you can find them all on Audible. So go grab a free book or take a listen. I love all the characters I've written. I've given them pain, ruined their lives, make them suffer, and maybe even throw in a heroic death. Or maybe they live to fight another day. Check it all out at chriscalvert.com, and thanks for being a listener of Hitched to Homicide. Woo! Shoe dog, that was a lot. And that is just part one. Hand to Jesus. It's one of the craziest cases I've ever read.
That's rough. That's rough. You know, what's scary about that is the fact that somebody can, like,
manipulate.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you're the suspect.
An innocent guy while your wife is dead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know. That's it. That's very scary, isn't it? It's going to get scarier.
Yeah, jeez. Okay.
Get scarier.
All right.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for something good. We're going to end it with a bless your heart. If you've got to bless your heart, if you've got someone's heart that you want to bless.
Yeah. Sorry, that whole case has just shook me up, so I'm just kind of sitting here going... Okay. So anyway, so here is the next installment of Bless Your Heart.
Well, bless your heart.
Okay, so I'm gonna give this one a title and call it The World's Most Considerate Criminal.
Okay.
Dateline, Pottsville, Arkansas. A man is in police custody after allegedly bragging about getting away with evading arrest. He even made a T-shirt showing a flyer from police asking for more information on solving the case he was involved in. Can't make this up. Okay, so police recovered a stolen motorcycle, but the armed person that was riding it got away when he ran across Interstate 40 into the woods. And sometimes it may be best to keep your accomplishments to yourself and not to brag about them or even try to make them your own merchandise about the incident. So Donald Cooper, that was his name, he was arrested and is currently residing at the Polk County Sheriff's Department. He ended up getting caught after he ran from another department and got away again, but through their investigation, they were able to quickly determine where he was and that he was the one who ran from us as well. It was also found that he had saved all Facebook posts about the case. Listen, I like to post on Facebook, but come on, man. About the chase, still had the white helmet he was wearing when he fled from police, and had even made a T-shirt bragging about an update flyer on it asking for information on criminal masterminding. Wow. Police would like to thank, this is the best part, police would like to thank Mr. Cooper for his assistance in the investigation because without his help, they would have not been able to solve this case and put this criminal mastermind behind bars. So there you go. Way to go, dude. Oh, once again, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, what's the saying? What kills the skunk is the publicity he gives himself.
Absolutely. And boy, that stunk to high heavens. So there's this week's Well, Bless Your Heart.
Well, bless your heart. Bless his heart. God love him. Bless his heart. If you've got one of these poor criminals who needs their heart blessed,
send it to us.
Be sure to send it to us. You can send it to me. I'll forward it to Rob. Chris at hitchedtohomicide.com.
Yep.
That's all we have for you this week. We're so glad you joined us again. That's my better half over there.
And that's my beautiful bride.
We'll see you next time on Hitched to Homicide.
Bye, y'all.